The air was thick with an oppressive silence as I stood beside my mother's grave, the chill of the Vermont wind biting through my jacket. The small gathering of mourners around me whispered amongst themselves, their faces etched with sorrow. But all I could focus on was the polished wood of the coffin, gleaming ominously in the muted sunlight. I felt the weight of the world pressing down on my chest, the ache of grief intertwining with an unsettling sense of foreboding. "Daniel, are you okay?" A voice broke through the haze. It was Mrs. Thompson, our neighbor, her eyes filled with concern. I managed to nod, but my mind was elsewhere, lost in a maze of memories that seemed to spiral deeper into darkness with each passing moment. As I gazed at the coffin, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this moment. Something lurking just beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. The service dragged on, filled with platitudes and memories that felt hollow to me. I didn't even hear most of what was being said. My thoughts were consumed by the past, my childhood, the laughter, and the shadows that flickered at the edges of those memories. It was then that my eyes caught a glimpse of something, or rather, someone among the crowd. A woman stood there, her profile strikingly familiar. My heart raced and I squinted to get a better look. No, it couldn't be. "Daniel, are you sure you're all right?" Mrs. Thompson asked again, pulling me from my thoughts. I think I saw someone," I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. "Someone I thought was gone." "Who?" she pressed, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. The figure was gone, swallowed by the sea of black-clad mourners, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. I shook my head, dismissing it as a trick of my grief-ridden mind. After all, Emily had disappeared years ago, her absence a wound that had festered within our family, unacknowledged and unhealed. As the service concluded, I felt an overwhelming urge to escape the suffocating atmosphere. I stepped away from the cluster of mourners, my heart still racing from the fleeting glimpse of that woman. I wandered toward the edge of the cemetery, seeking solace among the trees that lined the perimeter. The air was still, save for the rustle of leaves, but my thoughts were anything but calm. "Daniel!" A voice called out, and I turned to see my old friend Mark approaching, his brow furrowed with concern. "You okay, man? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I might have," I replied, half joking, my heart still racing. "I thought I saw Emily." "Emily?" Mark's eyes widened in surprise. "But she, you know?" "I know," I interrupted, frustration bubbling to the surface. "But I swear, I saw someone who looked just like her in the crowd. It was probably just my imagination. Or your grief messing with you," he offered gently. "Let's get out of here. I can't stand these ceremonies." As we walked away from the grave, my mind swirled with questions. What if it really was Emily? What if she had come back? My heart ached for her, for the sister I had lost, the one who had vanished without a trace. The memories of our childhood flooded back, the laughter, the secrets we had shared, and the darkness that had crept in over the years. I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to her, what secrets lay buried in the past that had kept her away from us. "Hey, Dan." Mark's voice pulled me from my reverie. "You okay? You look like you're a million miles away." "Yeah, just thinking." I forced a smile, but it felt brittle, like glass that might shatter at any moment. "Let's just go home." But as we left the cemetery, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The familiar contours of my childhood home, the small village I thought I knew so well, suddenly felt foreign, shrouded in shadows and whispers of a past I was only beginning to understand. The questions lingered like a heavy fog, and I knew deep down that this was just the beginning of a journey that would unearth the darkest corners of my family's history. The air inside my mother's house was thick with the scent of dust and memories. I stood in the living room, staring at the shelves lined with family albums, their spines cracked and faded, much like the recollections they contained. The photographs seemed to pulse with life, drawing me in with their silent whispers. I could almost hear my mother's voice as I slowly pulled an album from the shelf, the old leather cover cool against my fingertips. As I flipped through the pages, each photograph transported me back to a simpler time, where laughter echoed through the halls, and the shadows of our family's secrets were just that, shadows. My heart clenched as I came across a picture of Emily and me, our faces bright with innocence at a summer picnic. But the joy in that image felt tainted now. overshadowed by the darkness of her disappearance. I traced her face with my finger, longing for the connection that had been severed so many years ago. "Why did you leave?" I whispered to the photo, but the silence enveloped me, offering no answers. I turned the page, and my breath caught. There, tucked between the photographs, was a letter, yellowed and fragile. My hands trembled as I carefully unfolded it, desperate to decipher the scrawled handwriting. It was from my mother, addressed to an unnamed recipient, filled with references to the secret that had haunted our family. My pulse quickened as I read snippets. Forgive the past, must protect the children, and never to speak of it again. What secrets had she buried so deeply? My mind raced, piecing together fragments of conversations I'd overheard as a child. The hushed tones and stolen glances exchanged between my parents. I felt the weight of the unspoken words pressing down on me, suffocating in their intensity. I needed to know. As we walked away from the grave, my mind swirled with questions. What if it really was Emily? What if she had come back? My heart ached for her, for the sister I had lost, the one who had vanished without a trace. The memories of our childhood flooded back, the laughter, the secrets we had shared, and the darkness that had crept in over the years. I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to her, what secrets lay buried in the past that had kept her away from us. "Hey, Dan?" Mark's voice pulled me from my reverie. "You okay? You look like you're a million miles away." "Yeah, just thinking." I forced a smile, but it felt brittle, like glass that might shatter at any moment. "Let's just go home." But as we left the cemetery, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The familiar contours of my childhood home, the small village I thought I knew so well, suddenly felt foreign, shrouded in shadows and whispers of a past I was only beginning to understand. The questions lingered like a heavy fog, and I knew deep down that this was just the beginning of a journey that would unearth the darkest corners of my family's history. The air inside my mother's house was thick with the scent of dust and memories. I stood in the living room, staring at the shelves lined with family albums, their spines cracked and faded, much like the recollections they contained. The photographs seemed to pulse with life, drawing me in with their silent whispers. I could almost hear my mother's voice as I slowly pulled an album from the shelf, the old leather cover cool against my fingertips. As I flipped through the pages, each photograph transported me back to a simpler time, where laughter echoed through the halls, and the shadows of our family's secrets were just that, shadows. My heart clenched as I came across a picture of Emily and me, our faces bright with innocence at a summer picnic. But the joy in that image felt tainted now, overshadowed by the darkness of her disappearance. I traced her face with my finger, longing for the connection that had been severed so many years ago. "Why did you leave?" I whispered to the photo, but the silence enveloped me, offering no answers. I turned the page, and my breath caught. There, tucked between the photographs, was a letter, yellowed and fragile. My hands trembled as I carefully unfolded it, desperate to decipher the scrawled handwriting. It was from my mother, addressed to an unnamed recipient, filled with references to the secret that had haunted our family. My pulse quickened as I read snippets. Forgive the past, must protect the children, and never to speak of it again. What secrets had she buried so deeply? My mind raced, piecing together fragments of conversations I'd overheard as a child. The hushed tones and stolen glances exchanged between my parents. I felt the weight of the unspoken words pressing down on me, suffocating in their intensity. I needed to know. I approached the front desk, where a librarian sat, her glasses perched precariously on the bridge of her nose. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm looking for old newspapers," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. "Anything related to missing persons or unsolved crimes in the village." She nodded slowly, her eyes narrowing as if gauging my intentions. "You can find the archives in the back. Just follow the corridor." I thanked her and made my way down the narrow passage. The room was filled with the sound of rustling pages and the occasional creak of the floorboards. I settled into a corner, surrounded by stacks of brittle newspapers, feeling the weight of history pressing down on me. As I sifted through the yellowed pages, my heart raced. I stumbled upon an article about a series of disappearances from decades past, each case linked to unsettling circumstances. The names of the missing flashed before my eyes, and I shivered as I recognized one: Emily. It was as if the ground beneath me had shifted, and I was teetering on the edge of a chasm filled with dark revelations. "Daniel?" A voice broke through my concentration, and I looked up to find Mark standing at the entrance, his brow furrowed with concern. "Hey, Mark," I said, forcing a smile. "Just doing some digging." He stepped closer, glancing at the scattered newspapers. "You found something?" "More like pieces of a puzzle," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "There are connections here, things about our families that I never knew." Mark leaned over, his interest piqued. "What do you mean?" I pointed at an article detailing a murder that had rocked the village years ago. "Look at this. It mentions our family in relation to the crime. They were considered suspects." Mark's eyes widened as he scanned the text. "No way. I've heard those whispers before, but I always thought they were just rumors." "Yeah, well, it seems there's more truth to them than I realized." I ran a hand through my hair, anxiety clawing at my insides. What if there's a connection to Emily's disappearance? Mark straightened, his expression serious. "We need to find out more. This could change everything." Just as I was about to respond, my phone buzzed in my pocket, cutting through the tension like a knife. I pulled it out and frowned at the unknown number flashing on the screen. Hesitation gripped me, but curiosity won. I answered, "Hello?" A raspy voice crackled through the line, sending chills down my spine. "Stop looking into your family's history, Daniel. It's dangerous." My heart raced. "Who is this?" The voice chuckled darkly. "You don't need to know. Just heed my warning before it's too late." I hung up. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Mark regarded me with a mix of concern and confusion. "What was that about?" "A warning," I said, my voice shaking. "Someone wants me to stop digging." Mark frowned, crossing his arms. "That's just intimidation. Don't let it scare you away. We're on to something big here." I nodded, but the weight of the call loomed over me like a storm cloud. The room felt colder, shadows creeping along the walls. "I know, but what if it's not just a bluff?" "Then we'll confront it together," he said resolutely. "You're not alone in this." His words were meant to reassure me, but they only amplified my fear. What lay ahead was uncertain, and the more I unearthed, the darker the path seemed to become. As I returned to the newspapers, a sense of dread settled in my stomach. The truth was out there, but at what cost? The air in the house felt heavy, thick with the weight of unspoken words. My heart raced as I stood in front of my father, the man who had always worn secrets like armor. "Why won't you just tell me the truth?" I demanded, frustration bubbling over. "About Emily, about everything." He glared back at me, his face a mask of anger and something else, fear perhaps. "You don't understand, Daniel. Some things are better left buried." "Buried?" I echoed, incredulous. "You mean like your daughter? You just let her disappear, and now you want me to pretend it never happened?" His eyes narrowed. "You think you know everything? You don't know the half of it." I stepped closer, my fists clenched. "Then enlighten me. What are you so afraid of? What happened to Emily?" "Enough," he shouted, his voice cracking with the force of his emotion. The air between us charged with tension, a storm brewing in the small space of the living room. I had never seen him like this, and a flicker of doubt crossed my mind. What if I was digging into something that was better left untouched? But it was too late. The truth was like a fever in my veins, and I couldn't back down now. "Why can't you just be honest for once?" I pressed. "What did she find out? What did you do?" For a moment, silence enveloped us. His breath came in sharp, ragged gasps, and then suddenly, he staggered back, clutching his chest. His face turned ashen, and before I could react, he collapsed to the floor with a heavy thud. "Dad!" Panic surged through me as I rushed to his side. My heart raced, not just from fear for his life but from the weight of the revelations that hung between us, suffocating me. I knelt beside him, shaking his shoulder. "Please, wake up. Someone call for help." As I fumbled for my phone, a chill swept through me, an eerie sense of isolation in that dimly lit room. The walls seemed to close in, echoing the secrets that had lingered for so long. I dialed 911, my hands shaking as I spoke to the dispatcher. "My father, he's unconscious. I think he's having a heart attack." I could hear the operator's voice, but it felt distant, as if I were submerged in water. My thoughts were racing, spiraling back to the confrontation. Had I pushed him too far? What secrets had he been hiding that could cause such a reaction? As I waited for the ambulance, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The past was clawing its way to the surface, and I was standing on the precipice of something dark and terrible. I needed to know what had happened to Emily, but it seemed every question only led to more confusion and despair. In that moment, I remembered the attic. My mother had always kept things up there, old boxes filled with memories and remnants of our family's history. Perhaps there, amidst the dust and shadows, I would find the answers I was searching for. I shoved past the chaos in my mind and rushed up the creaky stairs, the dim light casting long shadows. The attic was cluttered, filled with the ghosts of our family's past. I began to rummage through the boxes, my heart pounding as I unearthed old photographs and forgotten trinkets, each item a fragment of a life I barely recognized. Then, at the back of the attic, I found a weathered wooden box. It wasn't locked, as if it had been waiting for me to discover its contents. I opened it slowly, my breath catching as I revealed a collection of journals and documents, their edges yellowed with age. I pulled out one of the journals, its leather cover cracked but still intact. As I flipped through the pages, a chill ran down my spine. The handwriting was familiar. It was my mother's. Each entry was a glimpse into her mind, her fears, and perhaps the secrets that had haunted our family for years. "Emily," I whispered, my heart racing as I realized this might be the key to understanding what had happened to her. I needed to know, and I couldn't turn back now. The truth was out there, and I was determined to find it, even if it meant unraveling the very fabric of my family's history. The attic was dimly lit, dust motes dancing in the lazy beams of light that managed to filter through the small window. I sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by an array of journals and papers strewn about me like fallen leaves. The air was thick with the smell of old wood and forgotten memories. I opened the first journal, its leather cover cracked and worn, and began to read. As I flipped through the pages, the handwriting revealed a tumultuous history of secrets that churned in my stomach. My mother had chronicled the family's dark past, detailing events that I had never been privy to. The words leapt off the page, recounting tales of abuse and betrayal. It was as if the ink itself had absorbed the sorrow and pain of those experiences. I felt a knot tightening in my chest with each revelation. "Daniel, you need to understand," my mother's voice echoed in my mind as I read. "The past is a monster that lurks in the shadows. It always finds a way to claw its way back into the light." Suddenly, a passage caught my eye. It spoke of a hidden inheritance, one that had been tied to Emily's disappearance. The words combined with my memories of her, the sister I had lost, who had stepped into the void of our family's chaos. The journal hinted that the inheritance was not merely financial, but tied to something far darker, something that perhaps even Emily had feared. She was trying to escape, I whispered to myself, the weight of the realization crashing down on me. I could almost hear her laughter in the distance, a bittersweet reminder of the bond we once shared. I flipped to the next journal, desperate for clarity. In this one, I found a letter, the paper yellowed and fragile. My heart raced as I recognized Emily's handwriting. The letter was addressed to me, though it felt like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. "Daniel," it began, "if you are reading this, it means I've finally found the courage to break free. I've seen things that haunt me. There's someone watching, someone who won't let me go." I read on, my hands trembling as I absorbed her words. She spoke of fear, of feeling trapped in a web spun by our family's sinister legacy. "I must escape this grasp," she wrote, "but I can't do it alone. If you find this, know that you were always my protector." The final line sent chills down my spine. "Trust no one." The room felt constricting, the air thick with unspoken truths. I had to confront the villagers, those who lived in the shadows of our family's past. They must have known something. I could feel the urgency swell within me, a fire ignited by a need for answers. As I gathered the journals and the letter, I resolved to pay a visit to the local tavern that evening, a place where the townsfolk congregated, and secrets spilled like the beer they drank. I could imagine them, huddled together, sharing stories that danced around the truth. "Daniel?" The voice startled me. I turned to find Mark standing at the edge of the attic, his brow furrowed with concern. "I thought I'd find you here. Have you found anything?" I hesitated, torn between the weight of the truth I had uncovered and the fear of sharing it. "It's worse than I thought, Mark. Emily, she was trying to escape something terrible. There's a hidden inheritance tied to her disappearance." Mark stepped closer, the worry in his eyes deepening. "What do you mean? Are you saying she was taken? Or did she run away?" I shook my head, my mind racing with possibilities. "I don't know yet, but I need to confront the villagers. They might have answers. They've been living here. They must know something about what happened." He nodded slowly, the gravity of my words sinking in. "I'll go with you. We can face them together." "Thanks, Mark." I couldn't finish my sentence. The words stuck in my throat, the fear of what I might uncover clawing at me. As we descended the attic stairs, I felt a strange mixture of dread and determination. The truth was out there, lurking like a predator in the shadows, and it was time to shine a light on it. I couldn't let Emily's voice fade away into silence. I owed her that much. I stood at the front of the town hall, my heart racing as I faced the crowd of familiar yet alien faces. Voices murmured around me, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. I cleared my throat, the weight of my mother's funeral still heavy on my shoulders, and stepped forward. "I need answers," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "About Emily, about what happened to her." The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. Eyes darted around, some avoiding mine, while others seemed to glare at me with a mix of pity and disdain. "Daniel, it's been years. Let the past stay buried," a voice called from the back. It was Mrs. Thompson, a neighbor I had known all my life, her tone dripping with condescension. "No, you don't understand," I pressed on, desperation creeping into my voice. "Emily's disappearance is tied to something larger, something sinister. You all know it." As I spoke, I felt the weight of the gazes upon me, urging me to stop, to drop the subject. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. A murmur broke out among the crowd, a ripple of discomfort. "It's not our place to discuss this," someone else chimed in. "It's best forgotten." "Forgotten?" I snapped, my frustration boiling over. "You think forgetting will erase the truth? It's time to confront what happened. Emily deserves that much." My voice echoed off the walls, and for a moment I felt a surge of power, but it quickly drained away when I saw the disbelief in their eyes. Just then, a figure rose from the back of the crowd. A woman I recognized but couldn't quite place. She had an air of authority about her, with her glasses perched low on her nose and a notebook clutched tightly in her hands. "I can help with that," she said, her voice steady. "My name is Clara. I'm a local historian, and I've spent years tracking the dark history of this town." A hush fell over the room as Clara stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. "What you're looking for, Daniel, is not just about Emily. It's about a legacy of violence and cover-ups that runs through your family. There are connections to unsolved cases, to disappearances that have haunted this village for decades." My heart raced as she spoke, the pieces of a twisted puzzle clicking into place. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Your family was involved in something much darker than you realize. I've gathered evidence, testimonies, things that were buried deep. You're not the first to ask questions, but you might be the first who's willing to listen." Clara paused, her gaze piercing through me. "And I think I know what happened to Emily." A collective gasp echoed through the room, and I felt the weight of their scrutiny all over again. "What do you know?" I demanded, my pulse quickening. Clara took a deep breath. "Years ago, your mother was involved in a cover-up related to a crime that happened in this very town. Emily, she discovered something she shouldn't have. She was trying to escape, to get away from it all." "No," I interrupted, shaking my head vehemently. "Emily is dead. I saw her coffin." Clara's expression softened, and for a moment I caught a glimpse of something familiar in her eyes. "Did you really, Daniel? Or did you see what they wanted you to see?" And then, in a moment that felt like a scene from a nightmare, Clara pulled off her glasses, revealing a face that sent shockwaves through my mind. "I am Emily," she said, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "I faked my death to escape the darkness of this family. I had to." My world tilted on its axis. "No, this can't be." I stumbled back, grappling with the truth. "Why? How could you do this?" Because I had to survive, she replied, her voice unwavering. Our mother's secrets are vast. She thought she could protect us, but she only buried us deeper in her lies. I couldn't let you be part of that anymore. The room spun around me as I processed her words. The realization that everything I thought I knew about my family was constructed from a foundation of deceit and terror. What do you mean? What did she do? Emily, no, Clara, stepped closer, her expression fierce. We need to uncover the truth together, Daniel. The past is coming back, and it's time to confront it. For both of us. The weight of her revelation crashed down on me. I was standing on the precipice of a dark legacy, and the only way forward was to plunge headfirst into the abyss of my family's secrets. As the whispers of the crowd swirled around me, I knew I had no choice but to follow her into the darkness and uncover the truth that had haunted us for far too long.